Okay, let me start off with a question. Do you ever stop back and reflect on where you have been and where you are going? Because that is the same thing we want to teach our students. We want to really make them see where they've been and where they're going when it comes to ideas with things in the classroom. I'm going to start off with talking a little bit about where I've been and where I'm going. So, my name is Melissa Summerford. I'm a I guess ex elementary teacher. I taught 16 years in the classroom, and I did things from advanced academics to third grade, second grade. I absolutely
Halfway
loved
to
being a teacher.
good to start.
Do what?
I'm
Oh,
just gonna refresh my link because I've got a problem on my end.
oh, okay. So was that not working?
Okay. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep. I'll pop record
Oh,
on then,
okay.
and then you're up and running.
Are we good to start? All right. I guess I'm good to start. Can anybody else hear me? Is what the question is. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I thought I was losing my mind. I was like, "Is it not working?" Okay. All
You're
right.
on.
Let me see. Do Okay, perfect. Let me see where I was. I was talking about, when I first started as an elementary teacher, like, I have to tell you a little bit about, who I am. I started, a little bit later in life. I was 26 when I went back, got married really young, had 2 kids, still married to my husband, 25 years. We had 2 kids, and I started working for an elementary school. I was 26 at the time, and I absolutely loved it. I always knew I wanted to be a teacher, but when I see like the influence other teachers have, I decided to start going back to school. So at the age of 26, I went back. It took me 6 years to get my bachelor's degree, but when I did, I became a teacher and it was the best thing ever. I also had another kid in between there. But anyway, I want to tell you like the Google Educator program, that is one of the things when I started becoming a teacher, I realized how much those impacted myself and my students in the classroom. And I started to develop new ideas. And that's where I'm going to talk about the STEM projects that I did in my classroom. So you can get to this website if you go to melissa.tools, and it's right up here. If you type melissa.tools, this will get you to this website, and you can look at some of the materials with me. And I just had to plug this in. These are my kids now, like they're grown adults now. Well, except for the last one. He's still a baby. He's a junior in high school. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about. I want to share some of these things that I did in the classroom. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the STEM in the classroom. Now, when we think about taking our kids to where they're going, we're not thinking about like the past of where we have been. I mean, I learned some things growing up, as far as technology, but I grew up in an era where it was text, and it was not text. It was writing letters and it was using pagers, but my mom wouldn't even let me have a pager. So I didn't grow up with technologies, but I saw the impact that it was having on my students. So let's talk about some of these ideas. So, in my GT classes, when I started teaching GT, and even in some of my third grade classes, we always talked about the engineering design process and how students were taken through a steps of learning, and how they develop the problem, they experience the problem, they draft it. I mean, that's how we learn today as well. But like, where are students going? We have to really think about what their futures going to hold. I mean, I can only imagine, like, when I'm 80 years old or 90, am I going to be like, I can't use this phone? Am I going to fight it, or am I going to grow with it? So as teachers, we have to learn to grow with it. So, my kids always went through this engineering design process, asking questions, myself, I ask a lot of questions. Sometimes people don't like it when I ask too many questions, but that's how I learn, when I ask questions. Then I start to brainstorm ideas on, when I'm creating things. Cause now, I do professional development. So every time I'm building a new session with teachers, I always think about this process, like brainstorm ideas, like what is going to promote the best learning for teachers. So my kids did this, and I wanted to have them think about this and do this every time they did like a project in class. Plan it out, draw it out. I mean, I still use paper. Paper's not bad. So I still use paper to plan it out, draw diagrams. Then I come and then I put it, digitally how it's going to look. Reflect. What would I do different next time? I always like to think and reflect at the end. What could have been better? I do enjoy taking feedback. Sometimes it's not the best to hear and, accept, but it really does make you learn and grow. um Improve, take that feedback and improve. How are you going to modify what your project or idea was, and then create, test it out. So my kids always did this in class, and it's something that I still do as an adult. So let's talk about some of the things. So, cardboard challenge. This was one of my favorite ideas and lessons to do with my students. If you haven't heard of Kane's Arcade, there is a YouTube video about this little boy who loved building games, and he worked with his dad's shop, and he spent the summers collecting all cardboard pieces, and eventually had his own arcade. So, the group of teachers that I worked with, we decided to do this with our students. At the time, I was working with two schools, and I was a GT teacher at two different schools. I want to tell you, like when you first introduced this idea of having kids just create, they kind of sit back. They're so used to being told what to do and having a checklist. So it's kind of hard for them. Just like adults, sometimes we're afraid. To just like get started. I had to overcome that hump when I went back to get my master's degree. I was like, "Where's the check mark?" But I learned in such a different way that it really inspired me to use this model of giving students the choice. So if you look here, you probably won't be able to hear it play, but just listen to their excitement. These boys came up, planned this arcade game that was with basketball hoops. They were so excited. Eventually, this project turned into a bigger thing because we did them in the classroom. We played the games in the classroom, but then it spread school wide. We gave out get tickets to teachers who then they could use for positive reinforcements in the classroom, because at the end, the teachers brought the students in. We did like a rotation schedule. They brought the students in, and we had a day of arcade. It was so amazing. Kids came in and played my students' game. It was such a wonderful experience. So I highly encourage you to try this with your students. It really sparks creativity. All right, let's move on down. Digital storytelling. I love to tell stories. So when we started doing this in the classroom, it started with my principal saying, "Hey, Melissa, we really need to get our students excited about writing. State testing in fourth grade and is a big thing here in Texas, where I'm from. So my principal is like, how can we get our students just to write, to be excited about writing? So I thought, I did some planning, and I thought about, well, how am I going to approach this? And I changed things along the way, because you learn to get that feedback from your students and how they are performing, whether you need to change it for the second class. So I changed things quite a bit, but ultimately, I'm telling you, the students were so excited about writing. I kind of hooked them with like a podcast. And, there's this podcast called 6 Minutes. And what it is, it's like this mysteries story, and it leaves a cliffhanger at the end. So I shared like that podcast, and we talked about, what do you think's going to happen on the next episode? And so we wrote about that. We started off by listening to podcasts to get them hooked. And then we started talking about different genres. What kind of genre does this podcast fall into? Well, that led into where The lesson was they were going to create their own podcast type digital story. And when they did that, oh my goodness, like these kids were writing at home. Like I'm telling you, their pencils were smoking. Like I saw smoke come off their pencils. They were writing so much and they were excited to come into writing. So, I started thinking, where does this fall in? Because here in Texas too, we're all about standards and where does this fall in Bloom's technology and taxonomy? And so I started thinking, how does this apply? How much depth and complexity am I getting out of my students? And so it all falls in line with everything that, my standards need to teach, and they were having fun. So I made both people happy here. But as you could tell, here's a picture of my students writing. We ended up putting these on YouTube, and I put them on my personal YouTube. And so I got the parent permission. I sent a Google form out asking, if parents wanted to have their students' work displayed. They all agreed. And I'm going to tell you, students were so excited with this. I had one little boy, Drew, he and his group, he came to school the next day, and he and his mom made QR codes. He was hanging these posters around the classroom, not the classroom, around the school with QR codes that where students could scan and get to his digital story. Like it was so neat to see that the mom comment. She's like, "What is going on? He's so excited! Like he wants to finish his story, and he says he's getting all these views and likes." So I'd love for you to click and see their complete playlist, because I have some that still contact me and they're like, my story is still on there. So I'd love for you to give them a like, give them a comment, because these kids are now like in 7th grade, 8th grade, but I still get messages from them, and they show how they remember that lesson. So check it out. That is digital storytelling. Financial literacy. Let's talk about financial literacy. Okay. Now, this was a lesson we did in 3rd grade. I did it with a team of teachers. We had a teacher that came in and she had this great idea. And so we took it and we reformatted to work for our classroom. But it's teaching kids financial literacy through actually doing a project, not just the paper and pencil and traditional way. Like these kids, what they did is they learned how to apply mathematical process standards by using real life situations. So what they did, if you look through this unit, you'll see how we built this out, how we started it. They learned about what is labor and income, and looked at a few like demonstration videos of kids who have actually started businesses. We looked at credit officer, consumer, and then they applied for a job. Okay, so we got into groups, and then they had to apply for a job within that group. Some were CEOs, CFOs, vice president of design, but they each had a purpose in their group. So during math time, this lasted probably about 3 or 4 weeks. And I took assessments along the way, but they got to pick a job. They applied for an application. They wrote checks. Yeah, they wrote checks and balanced a checkbook. It was really neat. So towards the end, they end up building this product here, and we had a market day. So here you go. They're applying for their jobs, and they had the little templates that said what job they were. I also had built a design school for the designer of the group, who was the design manager or the VP of design. So I put together, if you haven't heard of Kid Blog, I'm not even sure Kid Blog is still around, but it was the best thing back then. So I put all different kinds of videos up where they can learn, like think of a product, what were they going to build, why were they going to sell it, and it was just like ideas for them. So once they decided on the group, they tracked their ledger, they brought in things, and then we had to look it up to see how much money that would cost if they purchased it. I got lots of donations too from parents, but I had like a store, and students would purchase things, because I forgot to tell you, but they earned money for being at school. Like they earned paychecks for doing things in school. So that's how they had all this money to put into their company. So eventually, they had advertisements going on. Look at all the products they came up with. This was on their own, talking as groups, working collaboratively together. And then the day of market. Do you see this? We gave out ticket like bucks or money, something, paper money, and teachers used it as an incentive in their classroom that they could spend on market day. It was a great experience. We ended up, if you could tell, this was during Christmas, so it was perfect timing. Gave teachers something to do to bring their kids and move them through like the market day during Christmas, because Christmas break leading up to Christmas can be a little crazy. So it was perfect. And then we reflected. I mean, this was Frankie. When I saw this, I was like, oh my goodness. If you look down here, he was reflecting on everything. Let's see. She made sure that the product was high quality, or we made sure the product was high quality. Look at all of their reflections. They really reflected on what they did. So, financial literacy was a great idea that my one of my friends brought in, and we just took it even further. So try those things in your classroom. And then, if you want to be inspired, find new ideas. I always like to go to the Chromebook App Hub because it has lots of great ideas that you can take and change and make them work for you. So check those out. We used one out of there, and this is just some of the things when it came to writing, what students were able to do because we used one of the projects from there. But that is all for me. So thank you so much for being here. Do you have any questions for me? You could turn on your mic or you can type it in the chat, like you just said. I see Abbott.
Thanks very much, Melissa.
Thank you. Bye.